Okay. I think this is a new one, but you just, try to follow me, then you will get it. All in my heart.
Heart is top left of the back side of your sheet. Top right.
Okay, again, right? Now, sing together. the sun is shines on my face and on my eyes. The sun is shining my heart. The sun is shining my heart. The river is flow from the mountain to my toes. The river is flowing my heart. All together. The river is flowing my heart from the mountain. The flowers, the children, and the deer, we all love each other. There's a space for everyone in my heart. The trees, they sway and give oxygen every day. The tree, they sway in my heart. The tree, they sway in my heart. The bird, they fly as a school of fish swim by. The animal, they are all in my heart. The animal, they are all in my heart. From the mountain, the flowers, the children, and the deer, we all love each other. There's a space for everyone in my heart. There's a place for everyone in my heart. There's a home for everyone in my heart. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, first time, but not bad. Maybe next time we sing better. May I know there is the panel sharing is ready yet? Yet ready? Okay. I wanted to check, otherwise we sing some 10 more songs.
Good evening, dear Thai, dear Sangha. Let us practice the fifth mantra that Sister Boyim taught us today. Remember, this is a happy moment. How about just one more song called Happiness? Okay. Happiness is here. Thank you, dear Sangha. It's wonderful to see your smile. And tonight, we are together to celebrate the birth of the 5 mindfulness trainings. At the Buddha's time, 2,500 years ago, one day, Sariputra, the elder monk, took 500 lay friends come to the Buddha's hut to pay respect to the Buddha. And then after prostrate, touched the earth in front of the Buddha, they sat down, and the Buddha gave a teaching. He said, Sariputra, if our lay friends practice the 5 mindfulness trainings, they will, without any hardship, realize the capacity to abide happily in the present moment. 2,500 years ago. And then he introduced to Sariputra and the assembly the 5, they call it precepts. And we still pursue, we still practice it until today. And about 3 decades ago, our teacher Thai, and with his community of Plum Village, monastic and lay, they have a new version of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Thai is very revolutionary, as you know. He gave a new title, he gave a new explanation for the trainings, but of course based on the core teaching of the Buddha, of the 5 precepts. And it's very beautiful. So tonight, we are here to recite the 5 mindfulness trainings, and we're more than happy to have the panelists up here, 5 of them, and they will take turn to share with us their love story with the 5 mindfulness trainings, and how they study, practice the 5. And we have Cameron up here. He's a new student of the 5 mindfulness trainings, offered to read the text for us. After Cameron read the text one by one, and then our panelists will introduce herself and himself, and then go to your love story. Okay? And now we will listen to 3 sounds of the bell. So let us come back to our breath. Say hello to our in-breath and out-breath. Okay.
The first mindfulness training, reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating the insight of interbeing and compassion, and learning ways to protect the lives of people animals, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, or in my way of life. Seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn comes from dualistic and discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and the world.
And now we will invite Clytie, our beloved long-term friend, staying here with us.
La la la. Yeah, it's working. Good evening, everyone. My name is Clytie, and I live here at Blue Cliff Monastery. I came here when the monastery first opened in 2007 and decided after many letters and coming and going that I would like to live here, and the community accepted me. And that was the biggest gift I was able to give myself. I love how Sister said we were going to be sharing our love story of the mindfulness training. I think it's a beautiful way of expressing it. Because when I first got my hands on the 5 mindfulness trainings, the first few weeks that I was here and started reading them and we talked about them, it was an immediate love story. I was like, I want to live this way, you know, each and every one of the trainings just really like, yes, yes, yes. The first mindfulness training, I think I'll going to take maybe a little untraditional view, but I think of, for me personally, this is my personal attachment or my love for this training is that when I came to Blue Cliff, I was extremely broken. I was an alcoholic, I was an addict who, I came sober, but I had been struggling for over 35 years with addiction. And if anybody knows anything about addiction is, you know, your growth just stops at an early age, and I started quite young. So I hadn't grown. So I came a very broken person, and I had no, I think of the word reverence as, you know, I had no reverence for myself, you know. I had no understanding of myself. I was clueless of what my emotions were. I didn't respect myself. I had no respect for myself. And so this mindfulness training has taught me, and Thai teaches this first and foremost, that whatever we do in this practice, we have to start off by helping ourselves. We can't help anyone else, family, friends, whatever, until we help ourselves. And that really resonated with me because I knew I needed a lot of help. So I was like, oh, yippee, okay, let's go for it. But it was not an easy journey, that's for sure, because I had a lot of resistance along the way too. But as I looked more intensively into this particular practice of reverence for all mankind, all animals, the cosmos, the world entirety of, and you know, and how small I am, and how mass the world is, and how unimportant really I am in the scheme of things. And I think a lot of times humans pump themselves up, and I think we have, you know, and think that we're the center of the universe. And I think that's where we get a lot of our, I don't know, a lot of our issues, self, gimme, what I want. And you know, I don't think that and I needed to practice non-self, you know, realizing that I am nothing without all of you, without everything around me and all the interconnectedness of the whole, of everything. And so I don't stand alone, and I can't survive alone. And I was an isolator. I thought, I can do this. I'm just going to step outside of the world, and I'm just going to do this myself. And I realized that's, you know, that's not the way this practice works. This is not what Thai teaches us, that everything is interconnected, and that I learned from each and every experience. You know, to me, it's not like just not stepping on an ant when you're doing walking meditation. It's like, you know, when I first woke up, it was like really seeing, opening my eyes to the vastness of the world, and I became like really in awe. You know, there was times when I was drunk or was high, I thought that I really like, wow, this is great. But you know, it was so fake. You know, it was not a real heartfelt feeling of, you know, of appreciation for anything. It was all artificial. And so when I was able to start waking up from my dream or whatever, to be able to, everything just became so relevant, you know? I'd be walking along and just, you know, maybe a little anthill, and I'd look at that anthill and go, there's a whole village down there, you know? In that one little anthill, there's a whole village, you know, a whole community. Just like us, you know, we're just like Plum Village, it's a community. Well, there's a community of ants down there. There's a community of hives, bees in the bench, and someone got stung. But, you know, realizing that also that there's certain things in nature that we fear, like bees, you know, but also we can also appreciate them by smartly figuring out how we can interact with them, you know. I was grateful for one of the brothers removing that beehive. We had a beehive in the picnic area, and they were stinging people. And the brother was able to, instead of killing the hive, was able to remove the hive somehow and to another location. Now that takes skill, that takes love, non-fear, a lot of elements. So, so you know, this sort of teaches me to go through life, you know, looking at the bigger picture and how I can help in little situations like that to help a life, or donating food, donating clothes, little things. It's not the big things. I know I don't have a scientific mind, and I know that I'm not going to solve global warming, but I know that there's certain things that I can do on a daily basis to help the scheme of things. I'm not a person that lingers in the shower. I kind of compliment myself like I'm in and out, you know, and you know, I think that's good. I used to like to do that, but now there was no need for it, so I try to take quick showers, and I feel like I'm doing something that's good. But, you know, getting back a little bit to the fact of that I needed to find self-respect for myself so I could respect others. So my relationships were terrible. You know, they were not based on respect. They were not based on interconnectedness. They were just superficial. I actually feared people. I could not, you know. I mean, that's why I used to have to drink and drug in order to talk to people, because I didn't have any natural courage. So, yes, so for me, right, it was really important for me to develop some sort of self-worth, some love for myself. Otherwise, I was not going to be able to show anyone else love or anything else in the world. You know, it had to start with me. And it's taken me a long time. I'm just starting to get there. I have my days where where I sort of beat myself up, where I feel like I've done something not very skillfully, and I get angry with myself. And then I also find that when I'm at times like that, I have a tendency to be angry with other people, you know, because I'm feeling such low self-esteem. So And also, you know, my dualistic views is another big thing that I learned from this mindfulness training, how rigid my views were and how I wasn't able to really step out of the box and look at things outside of my own perspective. And that was really important. I see where it ties in with, you know, it ties in with wars and not being able to understand each other. And if we, you know, Thai was a great one for teaching communication, you know, nonviolent communication, and how the only way we were going to solve, you know, crises and conflicts was we had to be compassionate with each other, get to know each other, even if we were enemies. You know, the enemies had to come together and sit together and, you know, take a really strong look at our differences and our similarities. And that's another thing that I've learned, that, you know, I used to think that I was so different, less than, more than, you know, but, you know, I realize that there's a lot more similarities I have in other people than I realized. And, oh, keep going. I'm a big animal lover. I've always loved animals, so I don't know if any of you have met our little Bambi, but his name is Bamboo, actually. And, you know, I think that's such a beautiful example of showing love for an animal that's not the typical domesticated animal. I think it was done very skillfully. Our little neighbor dogs, who we love dearly also, came and chased the mother away when these two little twins were born in the brother's garden, and scared the mother away. And one of the babies was able to follow the mother, but the other one was too weak and couldn't. So it was just left there. And even though the mother came back to get it, it had some problems with its back legs. But after a couple of days, we went and got some milk replacer from Tractor Supply, and the brothers, a couple of the brothers took to such nurturing and bottle fed this baby on a regular schedule. They'd come out from morning sit, and Bamboo would be right there to receive his morning bottle. And we're just so proud that he has found his own family too. It was really important for us to also remember that we're not his mother and father, we're humans, and that they live differently, and respect that. So I love the brothers didn't take him inside, didn't cage him, didn't confine him, but let him be free, even when he was a little teeny tiny tot. Despite the fact that he might have gotten run over, but he didn't, you know. So we just kind of let go of that outcome, and he's grown up very nicely. He's oh, everyone loves him. Everyone loves him.
Thank
So,
you,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we have our pet, but we're not supposed to have pets, but he's not really a pet. We have our wild pet. Anyway, I hope that some of what I said made some sense. I know it's all over the place, but thank you for listening.
The second mindfulness training, true happiness. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I am committed to practicing generosity in my thinking, speaking, and acting. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others, and I will share my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in need. I will practice looking deeply to see that happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering, that true happiness is not possible without understanding and compassion, and that running after wealth, fame, power, and sensual pleasures can bring much suffering and despair. I am aware that happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I am already have more than enough conditions to be happy. I'm committed to practicing right livelihood so that I can help reduce the suffering of living beings on Earth and reverse the process of global warming.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Nick. So I started coming to Blue Cliff initially just as a volunteer. I just wanted to help out the Sangha here because we have a lot of work that we need to do around here and not enough hands. I basically started out here because I had something that was going on in my body. I got diagnosed with cancer about 3 years ago. What happened was that I let all that stress really pile on inside my heart to the point where I actually ended up exploding, and I had to get some mental help at that time too. It was a really hard time for me, but when I started coming to Blue Cliff, it allowed me to learn a couple new things. When I practice true happiness, obviously I think the little things and the unexpected aspects of life are the most beautiful kinds. For example, you know, you're just walking through a forest on our meditation walks and everything, and just seeing like a butterfly or just a flower blooming, or it could even be, you know, a leaf falling, the wind blowing and everything, and being able to appreciate all these tiny little aspects of your life can add up to a very joyful moment for you in the present moment, maybe in the past moments too, and even the future. I think practicing true happiness is just being mindful about the present moment, seeing the people around you, seeing all these smiles, seeing the kids play around and everything, and it's just very beautiful to me when I see people coming together and being happy with each other. I think that was another reason why I decided to stay here for long term. For example, we all see what the sisters and brothers can do for us here. You know, whether it be just like a simple motivational line a day, a pat on the back, or you know, sometimes even a hug, consultations even. But for me, the reason why I find more joy working here than what I do back at home is because I know it's for a good cause. You know, the brothers and sisters, they're humans too, and they have a certain amount of energy that they can expel out throughout the day. And sometimes when I see how busy they are, and it makes me want to help them, you know, because probably some of you individuals in here are going to be going to your consultations sometime soon. And on top of that too, you probably had some talks with some of the brothers and sisters around here during lunchtime and dinner time. That's why I want to contribute as much as my energy sometimes to helping the Sangha and helping them out with their tasks. So, you know, we have a lot of planning, a lot of dynamics that are in the background that you guys typically don't see. And that's why whenever I help them with doing all these tasks, they have more energy for you guys, you know. Happiness is pretty contagious, you know. I mean, you all have experienced it here. Happiness is very contagious. And I feel like if every single individual out there just provided just a little bit of happiness to one another, we'd be living in a much better world. I think to be able to obtain that happiness, though, you also have to realize that you're suffering, you know. I have to, I went through a whole entire year of chemotherapy. I've been through a bone marrow transplant. I have also been through a month's worth of radiation as well recently. And I actually have an upcoming PET scan that's going to be very detrimental for another bone marrow transplant, and it's a very dangerous one. So how is it that I keep smiling all the time? And it's because I see all these little aspects in life, you know, and being able to understand everybody here, being able to sit down and talk with them, and truly get to understand them as a person, not for how they look or how they perceive themselves to be, or how, you know, they express themselves either. You know, I think all of us are suppressing, you know, these dark emotions on the inside, but once we realize that we have them, once we realize we can face them, that's when you can truly achieve happiness, in my opinion. I think another good practice that I typically do every day is, I know we meditate, we have meditation walks with the Sangha, but I think it's more effective when you actually do it by yourself. And instead of just looking down and just following your steps and your breathing, start being aware of what's going on around you. Like, I think I was on a meditation walk sometime last week. It was actually a trip up to Sands Point, and for the last part of it, I decided to just do a little meditation where I could really notice all these cool things around me. I never realized that when the sun goes down, the sky turns golden. You know, like the amount of rare species of birds that are actually here in New York, which is kind of insane too. They're beautiful songs and everything. And I'd rather just try to figure out all these positive things that are happening around me, rather than negative ones, you know. Yeah, I mean, that's my practice, yeah.
Thank you, dear brother Nick. And we would like to also bow to Clytie for open your hearts and share with us your experience and love toward the trainings. There's one thing I would like to say to the family, that whenever Nick arrives to the monastery here, crowd, I would hear him laughing. And then it just, you know, I have to stand up and go say hi to Nick.
The third mindfulness training, true love. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I'm committed to cultivating responsibility and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. Knowing that sexual desire is not love, and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others. I am determined not to engage in sexual relations without true love and a deep, long-term commitment made known to my family and friends. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. Seeing that body and mind are one, I am committed to learning appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, which are the four basic elements of true love, for my greater happiness and the greater happiness of others. Practicing true love, we know that we will continue beautifully into the future.
Thank you. We would like to invite you, our Dharma teacher.
Dear friends, my name is Yu Lei. I'm from North Carolina. I've been following Thai's practice since probably 1994 until now. Now I'm retired, so I travel back and forth between Blue Cliff and North Carolina, and try to adopt Blue Cliff as my second home. So you see me running around everywhere. I'm supposed to share with you the third mindfulness training. So let me start with a walk that I had, and I found a couple walk in front of me, holding hand, leaning into each other, walk slowly, and probably point to everything that they see along the path. They walk as slow as I thought they would lead me through meditation walk. But looking at them, I imagine that they would have a lot to share, a lot of trust, love, and want to announce to the world that they are together. They probably blow up a picture as big as the wall to hang in their offices so that everybody knows that they're together. And then they dream living happily ever after since then. Right? So that is something, that ideal. That's something that we probably all looking for each of us in our life. We want to find our soulmate, someone that I can walk with me throughout this whole life. But in that relationship, if you observe all conditions in that relationship, there's one thing that enhances that relationship and can destroy that relationship in an instant. And that is sexual desire, misconduct. We know that as we grow up, our body develop, we get into a mode that we want to look for somebody, find other people attractive, we want to be with someone popular, and so on. Right? High school is a very crazy place. But at the same time, if we go through it casually, go from casual relationship to casual relationships, we develop a behavior that we hold small value for relationship and probably create a lot of pain and suffering for other people around us. Right? And if we involve in a lot of casual conversation where people take the subject of sexuality out and discussed, right? You probably get into a conversation that probably with the youth, young age, probably be a challenge. Say, oh, you see if you can kiss that girl, or you can do something. Or all the way to say, okay, get a phone number from somebody else, or get a date from somebody else. But those behavior, if we carry it out far enough, it too will introduce us into a path that we have very little value for relationship. Right? So if we look into it and we say, oh, now I want to find my soulmate. I know that two of us are different. We grow up in a different environment. We come off from different culture, maybe. So we want to be together. So we choose each other. Well, we choose is probably a wrong word to say. Thầy told us differently. But we do. We feel that way. And then we get to know each other and go out with each other and so on and build a relationship. If that relationship doesn't have respect, doesn't have acceptance, doesn't have contribution from both sides, care, then it doesn't go anywhere. It will break. Very soon you'll find somebody else attractive and you just walk away. So for us, if we want to build that relationship, a true love relationship, we need to be there, understand, contribute, and commit. The commitment would be known to our family, friends, community, everything. So I'm just walking through you through the first part of the third mindfulness training. Now, if they take that relationship and move the time to earlier year, what would you see? Child abuse, right? child abuse. You are having a relationship with a very young child. Just like that news that we received in last couple of weeks in I don't know, is it Wisconsin? That the 10 years old girl, right? That's just impossible for me to even imagine. Right? So that is obviously abusive. And then if I enlarge the scale into more people, more privileged class, more power, more money, what do I see? Human trafficking, right? Organization like that Jeffrey Epstein created. Right? I put myself in the shoes of those women who come out. I respect them. They have so much courage, right? They could destroy their name, their family, everything to step up there and speak up. That is a lot of suffering. That's a lot of pain. You try to keep it in secrecy for years and years and years, and here you have to get enough courage to come out, to say it. So all that activity that you see doesn't bring about a happy family, society, or anything. That apparently exists 1,000 years ago. Like Sister Thang Yim introduced to us, the Buddha taught that 2,500 years ago. That in order to protect our happiness, we must have commitment and respect for each other in a relationship. Do not just take it casually. We need to channel the energy somewhere else. Do something else. Do not keep continually feeding ourselves with information. Technology today, I'm sorry, I've stepped into another training here, but there's a lot out there that just bombarding us with that and make it so simple, so casual, something like that, and we hold little value for that, for the relationship between couple. So that we need something to remind us every day that creating pain and suffering for others through your attraction, through your desire is bad. And then there's not a lot of things happening today. I assume that many would see it as something new. Oh, something happened. All of a sudden, it's just not happening. This movement in our society. But I'll assure you, it's been there. It's been in human history for thousands of years. It's been there. It's just that as we cultivate our compassion, understanding, we cannot ignore it because it is the pain. Imagine if you have a child that grow up and have a different than normal desire relationship. If the parents hold on to the tradition society view, there's a lot of suffering inside that family. When we have autism, before science can prove that it is part of the brain that's causing that disease, how many people in society would say that is a possession by the devil? Right? We do. Our society, we label things that we don't understand them. It's so that we can make judgment. We need to stop that behavior because our judgment is wrong. A lot of times, they're wrong. So we need to see into the suffering. We cannot ignore the suffering. We have to be there. We have to be with them. Whether you accept or not accept, making judgment is not a good thing to do. Right? I care for them. I help them to alleviate that pain. There's no reason to feel that you are so unique, so out of the view of society, and therefore you had to go hiding. You don't need to do that. We all here together. We all different in one way or another. None of us is the same. None of us. So that's the third mindfulness training. I hope I do a good job. It's been kind of a lot of nervousness on my part because I don't know if I can deliver the message correctly or appropriately. So with the monastics here, if I'm wrong, I would wish that they would correct me. And you too, you have comment, you can talk to me, please. I want to learn from you, from your experience. And thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Chiyu. Let us bow to Chiyu. Thank you very much for your humility also.
Fourth mindfulness training, loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups, and nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and to look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and the other person to transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding, love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, and fear that lie deep in my consciousness.
So good evening. My name is Celia. I have she, they pronouns. I live in Connecticut. And I've been with the teens this week. And the Buddha warned against spiritual pride. So about 20 minutes in a room of 15-year-olds will protect you from any spiritual pride. Your spiritual achievements will be in shreds. So if anyone would like that experience, it's available. They keep me very humble. And tonight, when Sister asked if I would share, I said I'd be happy to share which training. She said, well, 1 through 3 are taken. I said, okay, 4. And then I said, oh, 4. Okay, yeah. And there's a reason. I feel there's a reason I'm here to talk about the 4th. Can everybody hear me okay in the back? Thank you, yeah. So I just want to start by asking if, when you were young, so little, a little person, did anyone here break a bone? And of those broken bones, does that place still hurt? Do you still have the pain? We got a couple. I'd say 85% is no. And when you were young, little, did anyone speak harshly to you? Can I see hands? Do you ever remember any harsh speech? And does that still hurt when you think about it? Yeah. Sometimes it still hurts. So the fourth training is often what we call the hardest training. And I just want to share how this changed my life and my family's life. And it's an emotional story, and I might need to pause and breathe, and I might need to cry. So I came from a family where there was a parent who had a lot of suffering. And when you're little, you don't know your parent has a lot of suffering. You just know it's a scary place. My father would have rages, would scream, would yell. And I am one of 6 children born in about 10 years. So that's a lot of kids. And there's always something going not according to plan with 6 children. And this wasn't the life my father had thought he would have. He didn't think he'd be working the job he had. He didn't think he'd be responsible for all these children. And when I was about 7, no, I'm 5, when my sister Laura was born, and that's when he started to rage. And it happened a lot. I don't know. Sometimes I could remember every day, but I don't know because it went on for so long. And I didn't know that raging, especially when you're a big person, raging at a small person is abuse. I didn't know that. All I knew was that I wasn't doing something right. I was doing something, or I was something very wrong. And if I could be better, I could keep myself safe, I could keep everyone safe. And I didn't know it was abuse, and I remember being grown and not knowing, because I said, but he never hit us. There's no marks on my skin, but there's marks in me. And I have a trauma response from living with continued verbal abuse. So growing up in that environment, I was afraid of anger. My father was the one who had the anger, and when it came out, I would freeze, I would get very small, I would want to be gone into the earth, and I couldn't. And it wasn't always what he said, it was just the energy. It felt like hatred. It was an energy of, that was the only word that I knew. It was that my father hated me at that moment. And I would avoid anger at every opportunity. If things were escalating, I'd be like, where's Celia? Where'd she go? Like, I'm out. I'm not doing this, no. And I would think, I don't get angry. I don't have anger in me, because it was so terrifying, because all I saw was, I knew what it could do. And then I became a parent. And I clearly remember the first time when I raged at my daughter. And she was 2 years old, and I was trying to do something. I was trying to get some work done. And she kept wanting me, and the words came out, leave me alone. And the energy that I said it with, and the force and the violence. And I remember her face of shock, just this little open mouth and shock, and she froze, and then she just cried. And I comforted her, and I felt so ashamed because I knew what it felt like. And I couldn't stop. And I knew what I was doing, and I didn't see a way out. And I didn't know that my father was alive in me. I didn't know that I had learned this rage. And my Dharma teacher, Joanne Friday, told me years later, she said, never underestimate the rage of a child who has been humiliated. And I had so much rage in me, and it would come out with my kids. And I remember, and then I started practicing. And when I read the 4th mindfulness training, where it said, in my anger, I will do and say not, I won't speak. I was like, what? Who are these people? What? Like, I don't understand. I did not understand how that could ever be possible. So I started practicing. And I remember my daughter was, I think I had just taken the 5 or was going to take the 5. My daughter was, I think she's about 7 or so. And she said to me, you always apologize, but you still yell at us. And I had this, and I said, in my mind, I said, she's absolutely right. Because I'm transmitting to her. And it's my turn. Do I want to transform this generations of rage because my father had a father who raged at him? Do I want to transform this, or do I want to continue this in my family? So the next time, so I decided, I said, I'm gonna transform this. And I knew I had been practicing walking. I had been practicing mindful walking, preparing myself. And then one evening, there was some mess made that was not cleaned up, and I had had a day, and the rage just came up in me, and every cell in my body wanted to scream. And I remember I looked at my kids, and they were bracing because they knew, it wasn't a surprise what was going to happen. And I turned without a word, and I walked out of the house, and in my front yard, I took one step, one breath, one step, one breath, and every cell in my body was on fire. It was like I was tied to a chair. I wanted to scream so badly. And I didn't know that anger's an addiction. And there was this craving in me to scream because I would feel so much better. I knew, because we can become chemically addicted to anger. And all I could do was take one breath and one step. I couldn't even take 2 steps. It was just one. It was like, breathe and step. I didn't trust myself to even take 2. And I was out there, just one. That's all you have to do, Celia. One breath, one step. One breath, one step. And I remember it was like, all of a sudden I'm outside. And there's rain on my face, it's dark, and I wasn't angry. And I was standing in my yard, and I had no idea how long I'd been out there. It could have been 10 minutes, it could have been half an hour, I don't know. But I was alive, and I hadn't screamed. And I was like, this stuff really works. I lived through this. And I knew if I lived through it once, I could probably live through it again. And the second time was almost as hard, almost. And I kept telling myself, you did it once, you lived through once, you're not gonna die. Because it felt like I was gonna die if I didn't do this. It was that strong in me. It was one of the hardest things. It's up there with childbirth. I'm not gonna kid you. It was hard. And it wasn't once. It was every time. And then I learned how to feel my body, how to feel irritation, and to take really good care of my irritation before it became rage. And the thing, so we'll fast forward. My daughter was 16. She's 22 now, but she was 16. And she went away with this family to Florida, and she came back, and I said, how was the trip? And she said, it was really hard. She said, Emily's mom always yells, and you don't yell. And I just stopped. You don't yell? And I was like, wow, I'm really different. I'm really different. And my kids are different because my kids aren't carrying this burden of rage in them. They're not carrying the shame of being raged at. And I recognized that when I was little, I didn't know little people aren't supposed to be the garbage can for your parents' emotions. That my parent needed a lot of care, but I was not the one who needed to give that to him, that I needed protection, and it is okay to protect myself. And it is extremely important to protect children from rage, because rage is abuse, and it marks us for our whole lives. So,
The fifth mindfulness training, nourishment and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption, I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the 4 kinds of nutriments, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousnesses. I am determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or any other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements in me and around me, not letting regrets and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxieties, fear, or craving pull me out of the present moment. I am determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate interbeing and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body and consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth.
Dear Thai, dear community, wow. I can see that my carefully prepared and printed notes are going to be virtually useless. I'm just so honored to be up here with these wonderful practitioners, my friends, brothers and sisters, who shared from their heart. So I will try to do the same and be impromptu and speak from my heart about this training. When I was first introduced to the 5 mindfulness trainings, it was in a session very much like this. And, you know, I cruised along pretty well with the first 4, right? I thought, okay, you know, reverence for life and be kind and be generous and talk nice and, yeah, I can do all that, right? But when I got to the 5th one, I was like, oh, shucks. I probably didn't say that. I just want to quote that one line from it here that tripped me up. Not to gamble, use alcohol, drugs, any other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. What? So, yeah, I thought, I don't know if I can commit to that because, you know, I want to be really honest and say, you know, I've consumed all of those things, right? In excess, some of them, to a level of dangerousness, right? And they felt essential to my life, right? So I like to read murder mysteries. I like to, you know, watch, maybe we didn't have Netflix back then, but whatever we were watching, DVDs or, you know, Facebook was just coming out. I thought that was pretty awesome, and I could check my feed chronically, and, you know, but I felt very uneasy in a way that I couldn't explain, you know. I didn't like this idea of being censored, told what I could read or what I could watch. I thought that that was a little cultish. But then I remembered, you know, when I became a parent, when I was carrying my daughter and later nursing her, I was very aware that what I was putting into my body, anything I was ingesting, would go right through to my child, right? And any of you who have carried a child or nursed a child, you know this, that it's not just about you. You recognize that what you consume has an effect outside of your body. And that is a really deep insight that just comes from living life. And I also began to understand that things like good food, healthy food, clean water, air, are all very entangled with issues of poverty and social justice, equity, right? So that consuming is not a individual matter. We live on a planet of finite resources, for one thing. And we've all had our fill of lots of things, right? We're lucky to be in a culture, a society, where just about anything we want, I mean within reason, is pretty available to us. So I started to unravel this training a little bit, and then I saw that there's so much more to it than just giving up that glass of wine, you know, at dinner, or 2, or half a bottle. You know, if it's really good wine. I started to think about, well, what are these 4 nutriments? You know, what are these other nutriments? You know, edible food, okay, I get that. Sense impressions. My kids were the first generation that had, you know, all of it, the social media, the gaming, the phones, every version of every phone, you know, whatever. And it was like an abyss. I mean, they fell in, you know. My daughter, you know, navigated it, you know, better to some degree, but my son, I mean, he was just gaming constantly by the time he was 13. I mean, it was just, it was clearly an addiction. But I wasn't, and my husband and I just weren't ready to call it that. We said, well, this is new technology, and you're going to need to understand technology when you're an adult, and you're going to make friends online, and you're going to solve problems with these games, right? They're strategy games, right? Strategy games. No, they were single shooter games, okay? And when he went into college, he started consuming so much of this kind of, what the second nutriment, you know, sense impressions, consuming so many of these sense impressions, and also consuming so much pot, that he became totally isolated and very, very unwell, to the point where 2 years ago, you know, he had to go to the hospital with a mental health crisis. And his friend, his closest friend, took his life. He jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge. And in the note he left behind, he said, "I cannot take the noise of the world anymore." When I walk here and past the lotus pond, you know, I've been watching the lotuses every day, and sometimes they're open and sometimes they're closed, and I'm trying to, you know, get into the rhythm of, well, you know, when do they open? And they open when they need the nourishment of the sun, and they take the nourishment, not just for themselves, but for the whole ecology of the pond, right? They nourish themselves. All living beings nourish themselves. We nourish ourselves. But we have choices of what we take in. In my house, you know, my husband has MSNBC on morning, noon, and night. Sometimes it's in more than one room, you know. I love my husband. I love him, you know. And I understand that you want to be informed, you know, about the world. But you take it in and you take it in, and so much of it is engineered and marketed to precisely touch those triggers of fear and sadness, you know, and panic in us. I think of it like, I used to live in New Orleans, and the Mississippi River, it brings silt, right, down the river. And every time, you know, every day, a thin layer of silt forms. And year after year, these layers of silt form, and that's what makes the delta. That's what makes the land. I mean, there is no land, basically. There's nothing, there's only sand and silt in New Orleans, and everything's built on it, right? But sense impressions are like that. They just build up, they build up, they build up. And if you have so much toxicity and so much negativity coming in all the time, all the time, all the time, it's very hard to wash it away, to cleanse it. You can, but it means you have to really immerse yourself in healthy sense impressions a lot. Nature, the ocean, loving kindness, your family, you know, anything that can help heal you. Healing is a continuous process. Nourishment is a continuous process as well. The third nutriment, volition, you know, I mean, if you're going to take the 5 mindfulness training, they say you can just take 4 if you want. I mean, if you're not ready to tackle the 5th, you know, you can just take 4. But I kind of want to say, you know, consider taking the 5th, right? Take the 5th. Because it's not about the things that you're trying to let go of. It's not about like, oh, I'm never going to have another drink in my life. I'm never going to watch a movie. I'm never going to XYZ. It's not about that. There's so much more to it. It's not about what you're leaving behind. It's what you're going toward, right? And so volition is like our aspiration and our directionality. Is that a word? Our directionality. You're in a vehicle. Yeah. What direction are you driving? Where are you going? For me, it was all the typical stuff. I wanted a good career, a nice house, a family. And I had those things. But when I met Thai, Thai said to just add more of those things. If you just want more material possessions, if you just want more prestige, if you just want more enjoyment, from entertainment or whatever, you're going to have a very hard time being grounded in the Dharma, established in the Dharma. Why would we want to be established in the Dharma? Because the Dharma is the ground of reality. The Dharma is the law of creation, right? So when you start on that path and you gain a little bit of momentum, suddenly these things that seem so important begin to lose their allure. And one by one, they fall. They fall. Okay? It's not like going cold turkey. It's you're going someplace. And on that road, you're going to grow. And you're not going to need the things that you rely on to cover up your pain. And the final of the nutriments is consciousness. And that's a hard one to get your head wrapped around. How can consciousness be a nutriment? I think of consciousness as many streams, right? You can have plant consciousness, you have forest consciousness, you have, parenting consciousness. What are you tapping into? What kind of consciousness are you tapping into? If it's the consciousness of just acquiring, then that becomes part of you. I guess I'm taking up too much time. I just want to say that what we consume consumes us. Right?
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Dear Thầy, dear Sangha, let us offer a lot of flower to our panelists and Cameron for supporting us. Thank you. As we've been listening to all of your teaching about your experiences, your love toward the trainings, we see that the 5 mindfulness training is really a practice of mindfulness, compassion, and insight. You see that in every sentence, in every trainings, we start with aware of the suffering caused by, and then we commit to or not to. So it's just like it helps us to navigate our path of practice. Help us to be more mindful about what's going on inside and outside of us. How to improve the quality of our family, our activity in daily life, and the impact of these toward the society and the world. Dear Sangha, it is very fortunate that every week here we have a time that we sit together in circle. We read the trainings. We share with each other about our practice of the trainings. And the whole Sangha, once a month, we would gather into this meditation hall. We would pay respect to the trainings. We will recite the trainings to help us to deepen our practice and understand the guidelines. On Sunday, at the last day of our retreat, we will have a ceremony to transmit the 5 mindfulness training for those who would like to go for. We have countless of people practicing the trainings now in their local Sangha, at home and here. And Rhonda mentioned about, you can take 4, you don't have to take 5. And I remember that Cameron came to me, and after learning and talking to the brothers and the sisters in the community, he told me that he would go for 1. And then he told me that I've been talking to someone, and now I decided to take all 5. So we would like to hear from Cameron about this.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone first for sharing those stories, those powerful experiences. I think Rhonda spoke to this a lot. I felt, I should take only the mindfulness trainings that I could stick to exactly, sort of in a very word-for-word sense. Like I'm a college student, right? The 5th mindfulness training is a little bit unrealistic for me at times, maybe. But through talking with the brothers and sisters and friends that have been around me and with me at Blue Cliff, and also from hearing from you guys up here today, I'm coming to realize that these are more about guiding me towards and helping me look at the ways that I cause suffering to myself and others, and the ways that I do that really blindly, without really knowing about why I'm doing it. I was really taken by your story, Celia, about just holding that anger, and I related to that sort of like instinctual, the sort of need to do, and sort of the need to act, and I'm not going to be able to attend the transmission in person this Sunday because I'm going to be at a sort of week-long silent retreat. But I was thinking about the way that these sort of guidelines help us reduce suffering. In my experience in one of those earlier retreats, it's called Sesshin. It's a silent retreat that's part of this tradition that I'm a part of. And I remember towards the last few days of one of these retreats just thinking like, oh, I'm gonna go like eat good food. I'm gonna go like watch YouTube all day, like all these things, right? Like just desires, pure desire. And just like being caught in the wheels of the world outside, weirdly like email is one that I really wanted to check, I guess. Just like stuff like that. And talking to friends. And I find in these trainings that they point me towards things that take me away from the present moment, take me away from the present moment and make me not happy, and take others away from happiness in a sort of blind way. And I think I noticed that, I was in this retreat, and I left, and I noticed like those things were not actually conducive to happiness. I was suffering because I wanted those things. I was taking me away from the end of that retreat. And then I found that they were sort of empty when I actually arrived at them. Like the videos weren't that satisfying, right? Like checking my email, it's boring, right? Like it's not. Yeah, so that's the power that I find in these, and I think it's not so much about the letter of the law, I guess, as you guys have been saying. It's about seeing how these elements cause suffering in all of our lives, and committing to stopping that suffering. So I hope you consider taking the trainings. either one or many. And thanks, guys.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Disanga, for your support of deep listening. Thank you, all of our panelists, and Cameron for your support. And we have a lot of time together. We can share more about the five mindfulness training in our Dharma sharing. We can talk to our friends, to brother and sister. We hope that we have more time for Q&A. But since it's almost time, how about just one? This is so precious opportunity. If you have just one question that if you don't ask now, you cannot sleep tonight. We're here for you. Would you please come to bring the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you for all the stories. I'm curious how all of you, when you were making your journeys, how your families reacted when you. I mean, I'm finding that as I practice more, and as I become more aware, it makes me more aware of how unawake a lot of other people around me are, friends and family, and of course I want to share in a positive way, but I also feel like, especially when you have family ties, it is a list of things, to do, to give up, to express, to a way to be, and if you're the one in your family unit doing it and nobody else is, I don't know, I'm just curious what your family stories are and how they responded, and did they come along with you? I don't know.
I think I'm fortunate enough to have a mom and dad that truly supports what I want to do in life. And also, it's very convenient that my dad's actually best friends with him. So it definitely made it really easy for me to practice, and he's also covered for me as I've been up here, and I'm very appreciative of what he's doing for me so I can be up here and truly practice. But yeah, that's definitely my family story.
Thank you, Nick. And Clytie, would like to add?
Well, just shortly, my life is 100% different, and my family has seen the change in me, and it's like unexplainable how it's healed them. Seeing me heal has healed my relationship with my family, so it's just indescribable of this practice, how it's affected people around me. So.
So I love the question, and this could be like a 5-hour discussion. I am the only one who practices in my family. When I, as an OI member, I don't drink or use any intoxicants, and that's been for over 10 years. I lost people, I lost friends, and the big thing was I was like, wow, you guys really aren't more interesting when you drink. There's not a lot that is going on in this conversation that I'm missing. So a lot of it was me that I changed. It did cause friction between my spouse and myself. It's tough. There is a lot of substances in my house, and I don't use, so there's some friction. But my family is so grateful that I practice. And they see the change in me, and I'm a lot more, and my practice is tolerance. My practice is kindness and compassion with them, because if I come at them like, yeah, no one ever changed because someone else told them it was a good idea. I mean, it's gonna make them run. And
that's part of my practice, is that I'm doing this so I can be a Buddha, not a Buddhist, in my house. And it doesn't mean it's easy, though.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Sangha. We will end with 3 sounds of the bell. And we wish you a good night of sleep. We can unfold our legs and massage them. And if we have any announcement from the organizing team,